It started as one of those evenings when boredom pushes you toward bad ideas. My friend Liam and I had been exploring the outskirts of town for weeks, chasing rumors of the forgotten well that old locals used to whisper about. They said it was dug centuries ago, long before the first settlers, and that sometimes, on cold, still nights, you could hear voices echoing from its depths. Most dismissed it as myth, a story to scare children, but the idea hooked us. Curiosity always wins against good sense. We found it just before sunset. It sat in a clearing surrounded by tall, lifeless pines, their bark gray and splintered like bones. The stone rim of the well was half collapsed, moss devouring its edges, and the air around it was colder than the forest beyond. Liam laughed when I shivered, saying it was just because the stones absorbed the day's chill, but the air there had something else to it, a density, like it was heavier to breathe. We tied an old rope around a nearby tree and lowered a flashlight down first. The beam disappeared quickly, swallowed by the dark. When we looked closer, we saw it didn't just descend vertically. About 15 feet down, the stones gave way to what looked like a side tunnel, a narrow slit branching out from the main shaft. It was like the well had been dug into something older, a natural cavern maybe, or something carved long before anyone could remember. Liam, of course, wanted to go first, but he'd sprained his wrist a week before, so he handed me the rope and said, "You're lighter. You can fit through easier. Just look around, take a few pictures, and come right back." The plan sounded simple enough. I clipped my harness, checked the knots, and slowly began to descend. The world above vanished quickly, his voice fading, the sky shrinking into a pale ring. All I could hear was the faint scraping of the rope against stone and the sound of my own breathing. At 15 feet, I reached the side tunnel. My flashlight revealed an opening barely wide enough for a grown man to crawl through. Rough, jagged walls that glistened faintly with moisture. The smell hit me then. Damp earth, rust, and something sweetly metallic underneath. I couldn't explain why, but it made my stomach twist. I shouted up to Liam that I was going in, and his voice came back muffled, but encouraging. The first few feet weren't so bad. The tunnel sloped downward at a shallow angle, and though it was tight, I could keep my arms in front of me, pushing forward inch by inch. The beam of my flashlight danced across the stone, revealing odd markings, scratches maybe, or carvings, spirals, and half-formed symbols that looked too deliberate to be natural. The air grew thicker, damper, and my clothes clung to my skin. Every movement made gravel crunch beneath me and sent echoes rippling down the passage ahead. About 20 feet in, the tunnel tightened. The stone pressed against my shoulders and hips, squeezing so close that I had to exhale just to move an inch forward. My breathing quickened, fogging the flashlight lens. I told myself to stay calm. Just a few more feet, I thought, and I'd find a larger chamber to stand in. I kept crawling, inch by inch, until the stone suddenly constricted around my chest. I tried to move. Nothing. The rock gripped me from all sides, unyielding. I inhaled instinctively and felt it, my ribs scraping the cold surface as the space shrank around me. Panic rose fast, like a surge of electric fire spreading through my body. I pushed with my arms, but there was no leverage. I tried to reverse, to wriggle backward, but my boots had caught somewhere behind me, wedged in a twist of rock. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe properly. The flashlight shook in my trembling hand, the beam flashing across the walls like a heartbeat. "Liam!" I shouted. My voice didn't travel far. It just bounced back, distorted, wrong. "Pull me up. I'm stuck." No answer. I called again, louder this time, straining against the stone. My chest burned. The rock was pressing into my ribs so tightly that every breath was a fight. Dust rained from above as I struggled, small bits of earth sliding down onto my neck and face. Somewhere deep inside the tunnel, I heard something shift. It wasn't an echo. It was movement. A scraping, dragging sound, slow and wet, like something heavy crawling closer through the dark. I froze. Even my heartbeat felt too loud. My light flickered once, twice, and I saw the tunnel ahead curve slightly to the left. The sound came from there, closer now, deliberate. I tried to convince myself it was just loose gravel settling for my movements, but it didn't stop. It grew rhythmic, steady, as if something or someone was breathing just beyond sight. "Liam!" I screamed again, my voice cracking. "Pull me out, please!" Still nothing. That's when I realized how quiet the world above had become. No wind, no birds, no rustling leaves, just the sound of my own panicked breaths and that faint, dragging noise ahead. My flashlight dimmed again, the battery warning flashing red. I wanted to turn it off, save power, but the thought of being in that absolute blackness made me feel like my mind would split apart. Then, a whisper. It wasn't an echo, it came from inside the tunnel, right in front of me. "Don't move." My blood turned to ice. The voice was faint, strained, like someone whispering through a mouthful of soil. For a moment, I thought it might be Liam. Maybe he'd climbed down somehow. But the sound didn't come from behind me. It came from the dark ahead. I froze completely, even holding my breath. The voice came again, closer this time. "You shouldn't have come here." I couldn't respond. My throat was locked, my chest crushed under the weight of the stone. My flashlight caught movement, something pale, slick, and human-shaped, shifting just at the edge of vision. My rational mind screamed that it was a trick of the light, but it wasn't. The figure moved closer, dragging itself through the tunnel, its outline distorting, arms too long, fingers scraping against the rock with a sound like nails on bone. I struggled again, pushing, clawing, trying to free myself, but the stone held fast. I felt tears sting my eyes. The air felt thinner with every gasp, the tunnel tightening like a noose around me. "Help!" I screamed. "Liam, help me!" This time there was a reply, but it didn't come from above. It came from ahead, and it said, in a voice identical to mine, "I'm here." It took me a full second to recognize my own voice coming back at me, and in that second, my body forgot how to breathe. The flashlight jittered in my fist and smeared pale shapes over the stone like fish beneath ice. "I'm here," the voice repeated, an exact mirror of my tone, the same quaver, the same tight breath. Then, just beneath it, as if my echo had learned how to smile, "Don't waste the air." I tried to inhale slowly, shallowly, but fear has its own biology. The rock around my ribs made each breath a bargain. Slide an inch of air in, pay the price with pain. I angled my jaw and pressed my cheek to the stone, feeling the cold grit print itself into my skin. "Liam," I said again, forcing the word backward toward the rope. "If you can hear me, pull." The rope didn't move. Something ahead of me did. A whisper of pebbles, the modest clink of a fingernail touching a loose flake of limestone. The voice that wasn't quite mine said, "We can't both go back." I fought the urge to thrash. I'd read once, late-night doom-scrolling, that panicking in a squeeze could be fatal, swelling your chest traps you tighter. The memory felt like a dim lighthouse miles off a black coast, but I fixed my mind to it. Think, reduce your profile, exhale and hold. Make yourself smaller. I blew out until my lungs sang with emptiness and tried to wriggle my right shoulder down a fraction. The stone abraded my jacket sleeve. Fibers whispered and snapped. "Good," the knock-me murmured. "Smaller." "I don't need your help," I whispered, hating the tremor, then listened to mine. The thing ahead scrubbed a hand along the tunnel, scattering grit toward my face. I flinched as grain salted my lips. The smell riding them was ancient and damp and faintly sweet, but the sweetness had turned like flowers forgotten in a sealed room. Boots off. Your heels are wedged in the seam, left foot first. I can't reach. The instant I tried to pull my knee, the stone-kissed bone and fire went up my thigh. "You can reach," it said, patient as winter. "Turn your toes out, breathe out, lower your right hip. We learned this alone, long ago." I let the words swim past. Somewhere far above, a pine's roots clutched the rim of the well. Somewhere beyond that, sky. It felt fictional. I eased my right hip down until the seam tucked into the soft above the crest of my pelvis. I twisted my left ankle, toes scraping rock, leather rasped like a tongue on teeth. I exhaled again, delivering the breath like a gift to the tunnel, and my foot shifted a single grain's worth. A hiss of approval from the dark. "There, see? We remember. Stop saying we. We will." The smile in it was audible. The flashlight sputtered. I smacked its body against the stone. The beam steadied but dimmer, a narrow cone with a tired heart. I aimed it into the bend ahead. For a moment I saw nothing but the tunnel's throat. Slick, wet mineral, scalloped pockets where ancient water had licked away softer veins. Then the beam caught a corner, then a plane. Then the soft geometry of a face pressed close to rock. Mine. The mind is a gullible animal in bad light. At least I told myself that. But what the beam found had my mouth, my cheekbones crescent, my left eyebrow's notched scar from falling off a bike at 12. The face rested sideways, lips almost touching the stone, as if listening to the earth breathe. Its pupils dilated at the exact twitch my pupils made. When I blinked, it blinked, but one beat too late, like a broadcast with a sliver of lag. Then it grinned. My grin stripped of everything except the teeth. I shut my eyes. Somewhere in the loudness of my bloodstream I could just hear it whisper, "Don't look away from yourself when you're small. You'll lose the shape you need." I forced my lids up. The face had moved back beyond the bend, out of the narrow's last flickers. Only the scrape remained. Behind my spine, the rope ticked once, just a slight, taut hiccup, and then fell still. "Liam?" I tried again, softer, as if volume could bruise the dark. "If you can't pull, answer." A very faint reply came, so thin it might have been the rope itself speaking. "I'm here." Not my voice, his. It bled down the shaft at a slant, muffled, swallowed, but it was him. "Hold on." The knot. "Hold on." Relief tried to bloom and hit the stone. I pressed my tongue to the back of my teeth to hold in the sob that wanted out. "I'm holding," I said, and the thing ahead whispered in perfect sync. "I'm holding," like we were a choir. I shut the sound of it out, the way you shut out a toothache by paying attention to something else. Boots. Left first. I wriggled, exhaled until spots swam in the beam, and felt the heel rise a grudging millimeter. Leather peeled from rock with a faint tack. My fingers, pressed forward past my head, found their way to the laces and worked them blind. It took forever, each loop a knot of wet cord and stone grit. When the boot came free, it didn't fall. There was nowhere for it to go. I nudged it along ahead with my knuckles until it wedged at the bend like a cork in a throat. "Good," said my other mouth. "Now, the right." Behind me, the rope ticked again. Then something else moved above. Not weight, but friction, like fiber traversing roughness. The motion shivered through the harness and into my ribs. "Careful!" I shouted skyward, and the tunnel made a box of the word and handed it back to me, warped. "Don't call to him," the not-me said. "It wastes." "I'm not talking to you." Then talk to the rock. It flattened its voice and spoke through the limestone as if through a pillow. "The rock loves what is still. Are you learning, or are you keeping your city habits? Hurry. You don't have long to be anyone." "Anyone?" The question fell out, ragged. "Some who come here stop having a name because nothing says it back." The scrape retreated an inch. "Do the right boot. Liam is slower than you remember." I worked the right foot. It took longer. My ankle had swollen, and the seam had a hunger for that boot. I scraped skin. The wet warmth surprised me, and then cooled fast. The taste of iron came into my mouth, even though the blood was on my heel. Memory did a trick. I was 11 in a crawl space at a neighbor's new construction, belly to plastic vapor barrier, dust in my mouth. My friend daring me to reach the far nail and bring it back. "You get stuck. I'll go get your mom." And somehow, in 2 decades, my skeleton had not changed. Tight places, remember? The boot surrendered with a wet suck. Both feet free, my toes met rock as cold as coins. I splayed them like gecko pads, seeking purchase. The tunnel pressed a frost brand into my soles. "Now," the thing said, and the now slid along the stone like a blade. "Breathe everything out. Fill your cheek pockets with spit and keep still. Count to where the counting becomes prayer." I did as it said because there were no other voices in the world that knew my body like this one. I emptied my lungs until my spine seemed to bow into the vacancy. The rock's grip changed from fist to flat hand. I flattened my shoulders by degrees, an inch, another. I felt, more than heard, the tunnel's palate accept me as a patient. When I could not go smaller, I used my forearms to lever micro strokes, dragging my chest past the pinch. The stone was an anatomy lesson. It knew what bones I had no use for, and pressed them until they confessed. At last, unbelievably, my sternum slid into a pocket that let it lift a hair. I pulled my hips through the seam, and then, like a cork clearing a neck, I popped forward 5 inches. The flashlight skittered, the beam strafing, and showed the bend was mere inches ahead. Beyond it, nothing widens, said the memory of every cave map I'd ever seen, but like a sullen throat loosening after a swallow. The way ahead deepened, not much, but enough that I could take a breath without drowning in stone. "See," said the voice. It sounded pleased, in a way that didn't have kindness in it. Small shapes become different shapes. It drew backward. "Leave the boot. You won't need weight anymore." "Why are you helping me?" A pause. Then, "Because I remember, and because there is a dead in the well." It shifted again. "Lamp. My light. Give it here." The hand had extended around the bend. My hand was colorless in the LED. It had my scar on the knuckle. It didn't curl. It opened to receive. "No," I said. The word surprised me with its steadiness. "I'm not moving blind." "You already are." The mouth I couldn't see smiled again. "But as you like." I inched to the bend and, hugging the stone with my cheek, leaned my eyes around. The beam threw its cone along a little chamber, 3 body lengths long. The ceiling rose barely enough to hunch. The floor was not clean rock, but layered with silt and something like paper that had melted. Cellulose sloughed into the damp until it made skin over mud. In that film, prints, hands. So many hands. Some had scrabbled in panic, long furrows ending in crescents of clawed dirt. Some had pressed flat, as if in apology. Among them, as if they were fish in murky water, other prints slid and merged and overlapped until they forgot which fingers belonged to which. The longer I looked, the less certain I was that the hands were only human. The not-me crouched at the far end. It had been crouching there a long time, I understood. Its patience had the smell of cellars. It flinched minutely from the light, not like an animal, more like a mirror that doesn't like what it must reflect. Its face was mine drawn thin, as if starving had taught it elegance. Behind it, the chamber necked down into another squeeze, darker and more polished, like something had passed through it often enough to oil the stone. I swallowed. It hurt. "We go that way?" "We?" It chuckled without moving its shoulders. "You go. I have gone as far as I can go until you choose. There's another mouth of the well beyond, but it chews you on the way. Maybe your Liam waits where gravity remembers which direction it likes." "Why can't you lead?" "I am leading," it said, and the softness of that sentence made me colder than the rock. I just have to be behind sometimes. I started to move. The silt took my palms like a feverish skin. The melted paper adhered and tore, whispering secrets that had been written on it once, numbers, half letters, the dot of a lone I. One near my thumb hadn't entirely dissolved. I cleared the muck, careful, and the flashlight found ink preserved by chance, a circle of hatch marks like teeth, and a line drawn through it toward a narrow slot. Beneath, in handwriting tight as knots, 2 words, "Turned sideways." I obeyed the old advice and offered my ribs to the new squeeze. The stone on my sternum receded. The stone on my shoulder came near. "Sideways," the other me approved, voice low. "You recalled it. Some forget. They get stuck the wrong way and teach the rock their names by grinding them into it." I wondered, with a bright, unnecessary curiosity, how many names the rock knew. The squeeze lengthened. The flashlight bumped and drooled light. I stopped to tape it to my forearm with the shred of my undershirt, a sailor's knot of fabric and spit, so that wherever my hand went, light went too. When I tested the tape, the beam quivered, but held. "Good," the not-me said. "Now the worst part." "It isn't already?" "This is only the part where you notice breath," it said. "The worst part is where you notice time." I pulled myself into the polished throat. It was tighter than the first constriction, but the rock was smoother, like bone, and that made it treacherous. No purchase except the faintest tooth where mineral had grown. I advanced with the motions a millimeter book would teach you. Exhale, slide, pause, inhale shallow, hold, repeat. After 15 repetitions, the space became indifferent to counting. After 50, The world narrowed to what my cheek felt, and whether my left shoulder was less on fire than my right. Sound changed too. My breaths were now the only clock, and even they were stolen into the stone before I could hear them. The rope at my harness had gone quiet, which meant either Liam had figured the knot or I had moved beyond where his actions could matter for a while. The tunnel asked me to confess another inch of myself. I gave it the skin on my hip. I gave it the scrape of my collarbone. I gave it 5 hairs of my left eyebrow, which the rock took with such perfect disinterest that I loved it a little for its honesty. "Don't love it," said the other me softly. I hadn't known I'd been loving anything. "It won't love you back." "What are you?" "Practice," it said. "The well is old, but not in years, old in uses. People have tried to throw wishes down it, dogs, coins, secrets, themselves. It keeps what falls that has a shape it can reuse. You're me. I'm what's left when you make the same choices very long," it said, unimpeachably true. "Keep moving." The squeeze eased, a fraction, enough to let me take a breath that tasted real. The beam loosened into a room no larger than a shipping crate. The ceiling hung low with tatters of roots that had found their way and then regretted it. Among them dangled things that had once been metal, rusted links of chain, a hook hammered soft by humidity, the bowed halo of a bucket handle. The bucket itself had become a black paper moon crushed against the wall. The roots creaked with the earth's slow breathing. "Here," the other said, "rest your breath 3 counts, not 4. I did, at 2.5. The room made a sound like a person making up their mind, noisy, subtle, final. The floor dipped without moving. I skittered one knee forward. My shin went numb. 3, it said. "Go." I pushed into the exit slot, which was barely there, a letterbox cut for mail no longer delivered. Here, the air changed. There was a draft, faint as a fever dream against the hairs of my wrist, and in that draft, a smell that was not stone, stale rope, cotton rot, the low fungal musk of old wood. Behind those were older things, groundwater lessons, clay slow as thinking. The slot took my head, then my shoulders, then paused at the swell of my ribs. I emptied myself again and slid. When my face cleared, the beam found boards. Not a natural chamber, a timber set, ancient and black with moisture, held a void big enough to crouch in, shored up with crosspieces that had been adzed by hand. On one of the posts, at face height, someone had carved tick marks in groups of 5 until the space was full of them like tallying days or names. At the end of the last group, a word jammed in desperation. Liam. My stomach turned to water. I touched the name because there was no proof until my fingers read it. The slash of the A had a little curl where the blade had hesitated. "Liam!" I shouted, no economy left. Just the muscle memory of calling across fields. "Here," he answered, and this time it rang true. It came up through the timbers like a voice up through floorboards. "Mate, is that you? Say something else." "Keep talking," I said. "I'm coming." "Don't," the other me said mildly. "You have to choose how to come." "Shut up," I snapped, and with a toddler's fury, my palm slapped the carved Liam like it could change history. The wood shuddered. Something else shuddered back. The timbers groaned. Whatever void they held up considered reconsidering. Fines of earth sifted onto my face in a dry veil. "You can't shout here," the not me said. "Every loudness is a pry bar." "Where are you?" I called to Liam, softer. "Are you hurt?" "I'm down. Can't tell, there's a slope. His voice faltered. You sound close. Your voice doubled. Are you with someone? Yes, I said, and then, no. He's with us, said the other mouth in perfect echo. Don't listen, I told him. Tie the rope off to something if you haven't. I think I found a support. There's timber, old. I tied to a root, he said. The knot slipped. I've been paying the rope out to keep it from sawing. I can feel you through it. You're further than you should be. Time changes its speed here, said my teacher. Did we not say the worst part is when you notice time? I ignored it. The timber set had 2 exits. The letterbox slit I'd come through, and below, a gap where boards had rotted into a moth-chewed grin. Air breathed there, and Liam's voice curled up it like smoke. The gap was just wide enough for a shoulder and the rest, if you were committed to not having a second thought. The supporting post with the tally marks leaned toward it at an angle that spoke of difficult decisions. If I go through, I said to the dark, that was me and not me. Does it close? Is that the choice? It will close because wood remembers surrender, it said. If you go, you make a hinge of yourself. If you stay, the well keeps 2 of what it likes instead of 1. What does it like? It didn't answer. Or it did by staying what it was. I took one more breath, saving none, and slid my arm through the bottom gap until my forearm hung into colder air. Take my hand, I called. If you jump, I'll catch your wrist. Count of 3, you hear me? 1. Don't count yet, he said. Say something only you'd know. You never finished the water tower dare because the ladder rung stank of iron, and there was a hornet nest in the platform. Your left canine is chipped from a Coke bottle accident. When you lie, your right nostril flares. A half laugh, half sob came up to me like a bubble. Okay, 3. 2, I said, because I needed to cheat the well of a second. 3, he said, and his forearm hurled itself into my hand. His skin was slick, as if he'd been written on by water. I locked wrist to wrist, bone to bone, and pulled. The gap bit. It bit harder. He cried out. The sound strangled by wood, and I used everything the squeeze had taught me, angles, breath, the thin humility of being small, and rotated his radius inside mine until the oval of the hole agreed with the oval of us. He slid, barked his shoulder on a board, and then half of him was through. The timbers complained in bass. Dust fell like a season changing. Don't stop, the other me said, and for once its advice was not cruel. Stopping is a kind of shape. I hauled, and the wood decided to keep what was left of itself. It closed the way a mouth closes gently on a burned tongue, without teeth, but with finality. A board settled behind Liam's hip with a sound like old paper folded. He gasped against my shoulder. I had him in the crate with me, all elbows and idiotic, beautiful weight. We didn't hug. The room would have punished us. We pressed temple to temple, a brace. You idiot, he whispered, which meant, friend. You heard me? You came? I came, I said, and the other me said in harmony, I arrived, pleased. Liam flinched. What is that? Something that wants me to learn, I said. We have to move. The wood's listening. We crawled the only available direction, forward into the second squeeze. Liam was broader in the shoulders than me. The tunnel scolded him for it. He panted too loudly. I tapped his elbow when to breathe. He obeyed, without argument, which told me more about what the well had done to him than any words. When we reached the polished throat, He said, "I thought I heard you back there before, hours ago, or minutes, saying things I knew you'd never say." "It practices on a voice before it uses it," I said, and I didn't look behind. "Will it follow?" "It doesn't have to." I paused, cheek in grit. "It's already where we're going." That was when the flashlight died. No warning, a dimming, a cough, and then a click so tiny it was the sound of a gnat deciding not to be alive. Darkness came down like a hand over a candle, smothering not only the light, but the idea that light had ever made sense. My eyes, which had been learning an alphabet of gray, forgot every letter. "Mate," Liam whispered. The whisper sounded like a shout with its legs cut off. "Mate." "Still," I said. "It's okay. It's okay." "It isn't." "It is." I pressed my forehead harder to the rock until its cold had my shape in it. We did the worst part. Now it's only the part where you pretend your skin has eyes. Can you feel the seam under your ribs like a belt? You turn your whole body around that. He did. I felt him move the correct quarter inch. There, in the dark, instruction woke in me like muscle memory, and my other mouth didn't have to give it voice. For a while, we were a machine, simple and tireless, that made distance out of pain. In the dark, time changed again. It picked us up by the scruff and carried us nowhere for a long time. We passed through one stuttering drip of water that lettered Liam's ear with cold. We passed a place where the tunnel widened half a palm and some sediment had collected. My fingers found it and became a child for one luxurious second, drawing a line. In that line, when I touched it again, another line crossed, a mark not mine. The dark fed it to me like a kiss. I didn't tell Liam. He said much later or earlier, "If we make it out." "When?" I said, a superstition that cost nothing. "If we make it out, I don't think I'll like doors anymore," he breathed. "Or beds, or shirts." "You will," I said, pretending. "You'll like a big dumb doorway you can just walk through without negotiating with it. A breath that could have been a laugh. We're going to be so gentle with air for a while." "Quiet," my teacher said from everywhere at once, its voice no longer localized. "Listen." We did. At first, I heard nothing except ourselves. And then I heard it, the tiniest difference in the pressure on my lips, the way a room knows when someone enters. Fresh air, not fresh like pines and warm stone, fresh like cold and unbreathed and indifferent. Ahead. We wriggled toward it like worms toward rain. The tunnel ceased to grind and began to slide. At a bend, a dimness presented itself, dark, less dark than the other dark. My eyes couldn't use it, but my bones did. Liam made a sound like a bird that had forgotten it could fly and was remembering mid-fall. "Slow," I warned, uselessly. We were already slow. We followed the new gradient until the stone beside my cheek stopped being stone and became brick. Mortared, human, delicious. The mortar had washed out in veins, the brick had fretted into sugar. A hole lay where erosion and will had conspired. Beyond it, another air, and in that air, the ghost of outside noises, very far, very distorted. Wind, maybe the far complaint of old trees. "Door," Liam said, devout. We widened it with fingers and collarbones until brick dust had painted our tongues. The last bond gave with a softened crack, and the masonry's stale breath went out. We pushed our heads through into a narrow vertical shaft lined with rings of stone, the well's other throat. Cold sang up it. Above, A pale mouth, night sky, or buried day. I couldn't tell. The rope moved against my hip as if in relief. Liam sobbed once. A bark he swallowed fast. "Don't climb fast," the other me said. It spoke not from behind now, but from the stones, as if mortared in. It loves the hurry. Hurry breaks. I paused, palms on the lower ring, and felt how the stones wanted my hands to be ladders. I climbed anyway, but I did it as if I was teaching someone to climb, slowly enough that the well had time to not object. Liam came behind, quiet as he could. The rope lay slack between us, a dead snake we both pretended was still useful. At the 15th ring, a sound came down that had no business in a well, a low, patient humming like a refrigerator in an empty kitchen. Then a scrape and a knock, knuckles on a door you can't open anymore. "Who's there?" called a woman's voice. Liam froze. The voice wasn't his neighbor or the cop or anyone alive. It was his mother's, dead 5 years, brimming with a cheerfulness she had not used in her last winter. "Liam, sweetie, you left your jacket." He made an animal noise. I reached down and squeezed his wrist until I felt the noise climb back into him and curl up. "Keep moving," I said. "She's above," he said. "Terrible hope in it." "It's below," I said. And the voice that was my own, not my own, said, "We are everywhere there is an answer." We climbed. The rings counted us like rosary beads. At the last 4, they grew slick. Algae turned to fur under our fingers. Night leaned over the mouth and blinked. Wind came in honest. A shape crossed the sky, a bird or a bat that the well had not learned to imitate. My head rose into air so cold it hurt, and stars scattered themselves into my eyes like salt. Hands caught my forearms, not Liam's, not the other's, human, alive, trembling with adrenaline. A silhouette with a headlamp hauled me up over the rim. The lamp burned like a sermon. Behind him there were 2 more figures in the geometry of a tripod. The rope went to a belay device. A second rope, new, clean, paid out into the dark. "Got him," the rescuer said to the night. "One more on rope. You okay?" I nodded, and tears climbed over my cheeks without my help. I could smell the pine's bark, the honest rot of leaves, the metal of the belay. My throat tried to name everything it loved and could not. "Pull," I said. "Careful. Slow." They were slow. The device sang gently as it took Liam's weight. When his head rose into the cool, his mouth opened like he meant to take a bite out of air itself. They laid us on blankets and did the stupid, epic things of the surface world, checking pupils, offering water, asking names. I drank and coughed and drank again. The first rescuer touched my wrist and put a pulse oximeter on it. The little red LED winked obscene joy. "How long?" I asked, the words like small animals. 3 hours since your friend ran to the trailhead," the headlamp man said, then glanced at his partner. "Or 10. The ranger called us, and then we set up, and time out here is dumb." He grinned, brittle. "Feels shorter. You're lucky he found signal." My friend? I turned toward Liam, but he was already sitting, blanket around his shoulders, staring at the well's mouth as if expecting a face like his to rise out of it. "I didn't." "Run," he said, voice hoarse. "I never left the well. I was below you." The rescuer frowned. "A hiker flagged me down, said his mate was stuck down an old shaft and he couldn't haul him alone. Was that not you?" I could taste the well in the back of my throat, a thin film-like sleep. I stared into the mouth. The dark on its stones had a memory, Down there, something that had worn my face learned how to climb without moving. The wind shifted, and for half a second, a smell came up that didn't belong to any forest. Hot rock, rust, damp paper, the polite breath of old wood. Then it was gone. "Thank you," I said to the headlamp, and meant it so hard it hurt. "We're okay," which was the beginning of a kind of truth. They bundled us. They logged coordinates. They made phone calls that reached the world. We walked out under trees that stood like kindly giants and listened to leaves that had the decency to make sense when they moved. The path was honest dirt. The stars did not try to teach us anything. At the trailhead, the ranger's truck waited and passed it the road, shining not with water, but with confidence. The rescuer clapped Liam's shoulder. "You'll be telling this one for a while, boys." I opened my mouth to say we wouldn't, that we'd file this in the forbidden drawer of our heads. And then the night did a small, specific thing. It breathed, and in that breath, just behind the chatter of the radio and the seductive sanity of headlights, a voice said, in perfect sync with mine, "We will." I looked at Liam. He looked at me. We both smiled, weak and reluctant at the same time, and our smiles did not have all our teeth in them. We slept that dawn in separate rooms because doors felt like a good religion for a while. We texted each other sentences with no verbs. We stood under showers and taught our shoulders new shapes. Sometime around noon, I dreamed I was in the well again, and when I woke, my mouth tasted of brick. That evening, after the paramedics had finished their paperwork and the ranger had told us the story of how no well was on any map and how we must have found a ruin and how the county would come out tomorrow and mark it safe or impossible. After the air had become a thing I could sit inside like a house, I took the flashlight from my bag. I hadn't remembered putting it there. Its body still held the smear of my undershirt's tape. I clicked it. It came on. The beam was wrong. It was the same LED, the same warm cheapness, but it caught dust motes that were not in my room. The mote cloud rotated, slow, as if stirred by breath I could not feel. In it, a shape leaned toward me until the glass of the lens kissed the glass of my eye, and a mouth like mine, only patient, said, "Don't waste your doors." The light went out. My bedroom swallowed me like a friend. Somewhere in the apartment a pipe ticked, honest metal cooling. I sat with the unhelpful knowledge that the well had not stayed where we left it, because it had never been only a place. It had been a teaching. I put the flashlight in the trash under the sink. The sensible part of my brain called this superstition. The part that had learned to breathe in a squeeze called it strategy. Liam texted, "You hear anything weird?" I typed, "Only my heart." Then, after a beat, "Don't go near any holes for a while." "I'm deleting the letter O from my phone," he wrote, "just to be safe." I sent back a laugh, and it felt like practice. We did not go back to the clearing. The county came the next day and did not find it. That's the honest sentence the ranger left on my voicemail after chasing coordinates that had become wrong. He laughed, pretending not to be unnerved. "You sure you weren't in the South Ravine?" he said, as if a ravine were a misplaced set of keys. "We'll keep looking." At night, the apartment has new sounds, ordinary ones that I had never bothered to love. A neighbor's drawer, a skateboard somewhere below, a distant siren making geometry out of air. When those sounds stop, when the world holds its breath, I think of the tally marks on the timber, how hands remember. I think of the word a stranger carved with my friend's name. I think of the not-me who had learned me like an instrument and was generous with instructions, because generosity is one of the shapes the well reuses. Sometimes I wake with my cheek pressed to the cool of the pillow as if it were stone. Sometimes I catch myself breathing shallow on purpose, saving air I do not need to save. Once, in the mirror, I smiled to prove that I could do it without malice. The face in the glass was mine, on time. I have on my desk a single boot. The other is still down there, wedged like a cork in a throat I hope stays closed. This one is caked with a thin rind of something that smells of damp paper and old iron. When I tilt it to the window, I see along its heel the faintest etchings made by stone, a map of where not to put your foot next time. There won't be a next time. That's the vow you make out loud and keep until a night teaches you that vows and wells share a fondness for echoes. If you ever come across a circle of stones swallowed by moss, if the air inside it is colder than the air on your wrists, if the wind seems to change its mind when you lean in, do not lower a light. Or, if you must, tie the rope to something very old that has made peace with its own weight. Better, tie it to someone who will not learn to talk like you. Better still, walk away, slow, small, careful, as if teaching the ground not to imitate the sound of your steps. As for us, we are gentle with doors. We do not press our palms to walls to feel if they breathe back. We speak at ordinary volumes and leave seconds between our sentences, like we are letting air pass. When silence falls sudden as a stone, one of us says a true thing out loud, any true thing, even if it's only, "This is my hand," and the world answers with the right echo. And when I sit awake at 2 a.m., hearing the apartment be a patient body, I find myself asking the oldest wrong question. Was I brave down there? The answer never matters. You are only as brave as the inch you have to move. All the rest is the voice that learns your shape and waits. Tell me, would you have kept going into that second squeeze? Or would you have tried to climb back the moment you heard your own voice answer you from the dark?